If you're familiar with Tier 6, you probably already heard about the Hellcat, which is, in the opinion of most, the most broken tank you can find at that tier. But little did you know that this tank can be extremely hard to play, usually because, due to its lack of armor, every single mistake you make with it will get you punished. And this is where the Jackson, a Tier 6 Tech 3 American tank, enters the battle. What is important to understand about this one is that if we compare it to the Hellcat that we're gonna do further in this video, it has more armor, and it can be definitely a good choice for those of you that want to perform in the Hellcat, because truly guys, having the possibility of destroying everyone with the Hellcat and knowing what you're doing is just priceless. So how is that tank useful right now to you, and how do you use it on the battlefield? Let's see that right now. Let's start with the comparison. As you can see, between the Jackson and the Hellcat, it seems like the Hellcat is winning every single field of stats. The firepower is better on the Hellcat, weapon handling same, mobility same. There is literally not a single aspect of the Jackson that seems brighter than the Hellcat, beside of course the credit coefficient. And this is simply because this software doesn't take into consideration the armor profile of both tanks, because well, unlike the Hellcat, the Jackson can from time to time bounce some shots. But we have to put into perspective what we say about the armor profile, because well, if you take a look at the frontal plate, it seems like it's still easy to get penetrated. Of course, if you're lucky enough, you will get bounces on that part, which is the strongest part of the tank, and if people shoot right there when you're using your 10 degrees of gun depression, you can nearly be guaranteed that no one will penetrate you. But there are two big weak spots that are hard to hide. The first being the lower part of the hull, and the second being obviously its gun mantlet. If you're lucky enough, people will shoot at this area right there, but there is a little weak spot, the little bar right there, that effectively has 100mm only of armor, which means that you can get from time to time penetrated directly into your gun mantlet. For the rest of the tank, do not bother trying anything, you will get penetrated, and especially the side turret with HE shells, because if I'm not mistaken, you share the exact same turret as the one we have on the Hellcat. So be careful about that, because obviously this is not something you want to happen to you. On top of that, you have this part right there, this little thing that is just the roof of the tank that you don't see on the model, and well, if someone shots that part and that part only, it will bounce off because it's not counted as the armor of the tank. But if the Hellcat seems to be a better tank overall except for the armor profile, why would you play the Jackson? How to play it? And by how to play it, I don't mean the Jackson, I mean the Hellcat. It's a really good way for you to understand how the Hellcat work, and after maybe put aside the Jackson to play only the Hellcat, simply because, well, the Hellcat is probably the best Tier 6 ever, and this review feels more about the Hellcat rather than the Jackson. As you can see, the Jackson seems to be a little bit slow compared to the Hellcat, and well, also compared to most tank destroyers of that tier. You also have 10 degrees of gun depression that will allow you to do the job. For the regular playstyle, what you want to do with that tank is make sure that you are not the one people are shooting at. Here, for example, I took one shot from the ARL, but now I'm trying not to get bothered by them, switching to adrenaline, trying to sneak as much shots as possible. And this is exactly what you're supposed to do with the Jackson. You're supposed to play like a regular tank destroyer, and keep in mind that even if, yes, you have a big plate of armor that can bounce, don't count on it too often. As you can see, the ARL just penetrated me straight into my gun mantlet, so well, it should tell you about the armor profile. Now, of course, for the people that are not believing that the Hellcat is a good tank, or even the Jackson is not a good tank, let me change your mind. This thing right there has 10 degrees of gun depression, one of the best DPMs of its tier. It also has a fully traversable turret, and most importantly, it has that little plate that can bounce, as we saw with the VK that just bounced off. And well, even if it's not as broken as in terms of DPM as a Cryos that has 2.7k, a Hellcat that has 2.8k, or even the regular Yak Panzer that also has 2.7k, well, you can still do a lot with it. And it's important to actually try out that tank if you are not comfortable with the Hellcat, because trust me, out of all the tech tree tanks in the game, the one that will bring you the most credits without doing enrichments, without using credit booster, without using anything, is definitely the Hellcat, which seems to be the craziest tank in order for you to make a lot of credits without spending anything. Of course, if you're lucky enough to play different Wargaming's event and unlock tanks for free, use your premiums. But if you don't have time, if you have a job, or just if you don't want to play the game all day, could be a good idea. Now, for that second game, we're going to focus only on our playstyle for you to truly understand the keys to victory with this tank. As I just mentioned in the previous game, you have not to be the one people are targeting. You don't have enough armor to be sustainable with it. So, well, what we do right now is trying to use our slow mobility to get into position before the others manage to do. And, well, that's how we start. We are sneaking our shells. Unfortunately, right now, you see that we are the one getting targeted, which means that we're not gonna be able to stay here. As you can see, we already lost too many hit points straight simply because people are shooting at us, which is a good indicator that you need to step aside and wait for the other from your team to do their job. Luckily for me, there is a T1 heavy that decided to rush in and just die into battle. Thank you, mate, I really appreciate it. And right now I can use my tank to the maximum, because right now this guy, the Magnus, doesn't care about me. I can allow myself to just go in and sneak my shells. And this is pretty much the whole thing you need to do. When people are not looking at you, this is where you are the strongest. 2.1k DPM, and just see my little ribbon on the side of my screen right now. I'm gonna try to identify where it is. Here, yeah, right there. You will see my ribbon and my number of damage climbing up. And you see, or you will realize that when nobody is taking care of you and you can shoot non-stop like I'm doing right there, I'm doing a lot of damage. I did 1.8k, which is roughly the equivalent of 2 tier 6. So by ourselves, in 1.5 minutes, we already killed 2 tier 6 tanks in a tier 6 game, which is a good indicator to tell you that, well, even if, yes, you don't have the same gun as the Hellcat, you're still effective. And this is the whole playstyle. It's not really complicated. You stick with the rest of your heavy tanks, you make sure that they are the one taking shots and not you, and bang, that's it, you are set up for the whole game. There is nothing that complicated. You don't need to understand how maps work, you don't need to circle around, you don't need to go with the mediums. It's just pure keeping it real with the heavies and wait for them to take shots, and once the enemies are reloading, you go out of your corner, sneak your shot, go back to a safe cover, and repeat. This is it. Nothing else, nothing more. I mean, who can't learn like that? And if after maybe 50 games with the tank or something like that, you feel more comfortable, then you can try out the Hellcat. That is definitely a better tank, but has truly a different playstyle, because with the Hellcat you can try whatever you want. Go with the lights, go with the mediums, go with the heavies, or play like a traditional tank destroyer, even if the tank is not made for it. And that's it pretty much for this tank. Now we are only gonna bring out the piece out of the VK2801. Hopefully we'll be able to climb up to get him. I'm gonna try an HE because behind the bush I thought that maybe I could penetrate, but it seems like I can only penetrate from the back. Not a problem. Still switching to HE shells. Bang. See ya, VK. Thanks for coming. And this is the story of the Jackson, a tank that is, in my opinion, underestimated, not played by a lot, and that should get a little bit more credits, in my opinion. As you can see, on top of that, you can do a lot of first class with it due to the fact that nobody's playing it, which will increase the total amount of credits you can make with. So hopefully you enjoyed. If that's the case, feel free to subscribe, like, and share, and tell me in the comments what you think about this tank. Do you think it's worth it or not? Will you keep it? Will you try it? Or do you still prefer the Hellcat? Personally, my first love is the Hellcat, but I like my Jackson from time to time. See ya.